So this is talking about my procedure that I developed. This is called Asserting Sovereignty. How do you assert it? What we'll learn today, who you are. We've kind of started that a little bit. Now you have to understand that, again, a lot of this stuff is kind of abstract, and so you have to think about it, and it'll come to you over time. It's a good idea to probably get a copy of the DVD so you can watch the presentation again, because then you'll have you can review it, you know. You'll learn how to assert your rights. You'll learn about a procedure to build a case against our public servants that will stand up in court. They will know exactly what you're doing. Okay. There's a friend of mine in one guy I met up in Canada, and his dad was a cop. And he said until he saw my presentation, he said he never realized, but he said his dad used to sit at the kitchen table with his buddies and build cases against people. So that's what we're doing. And they'll know that's what you're doing. And hopefully they do know, because quite frankly, I just assume they honored their oath. You know, I just assume that I don't have to go after them. But if I do, I'm going to lay the foundation so I can, and it'll be their absolute worst nightmare. And that's what I tell them. Go ahead, if you're going to be a criminal, go ahead and take me over there and blow my brains out, because if you don't, you're going to wish you did, and I'll do it all within the law. And so I want them to know that that's exactly what I'm doing. There are three kinds of unhappy men. This is Koch's maxims. Okay, Sir Edward Koch, remember? He that hath knowledge and teacheth not. He that teacheth and liveth not thereafter. I guess if you teach something and get killed or something like that, that could be a problem. He that knoweth not and doth not inquire to understand. Yeah, well, that's certainly a interesting situation. I've been studying law for over 20 years. Someone told me about the two classes of citizens in the 1990s, in the early 1990s, and I told them they're crazy. I said, you're nuts. You don't know what you're talking about. Then they produced some court cases, and I thought, if this is true, this is just the most fantastic thing there is. And so, you know, I travel all over the place, and everywhere I went, I ran into people, and I talked to people, and I picked up a lot of stuff over the years. And a lot of the stuff you're seeing here today is stuff that, but it was really, and we'll go into this. In the mid-1990s, I was in Toronto working on a contract for Bombardier on a contract, and I met a guy by the name of Patrick Ellis. And Patrick Ellis taught me about court procedure and how to file a lawsuit. And when I was in Ontario, I filed actually 3 lawsuits, and 2 of them went to the Court of Appeals. I filed several lawsuits in Ontario. I've been to the Ontario Court of Appeals twice. I've filed numerous lawsuits in the U.S. I've taken them to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 9th Circuit, the 5th Circuit, the 2nd Circuit, and the D.C. Circuit. I've taken 2 cases to the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm currently in the U.S. Supreme Court. In 2004, it was recommended to me to get some of Rice McLeod's material. Rice McLeod was the Attorney General for the Republic of Texas. Rice McLeod had a very down-to-earth way of explaining the law. Rice McLeod really helped me to see what was going on, and it really helped me to just put it all together, because I knew about the 2 classes, but I just didn't get it, you know, how all the rest of it was coming into play. In 2006, I moved to Texas, and I got involved in the Republic of Texas. I was elected to Congress. I don't know if you remember Jerry Lahr. He suggested I might want to run for Congress, so I did. And then once I went to the first meeting, Jerry suggested I might want to run for Speaker. And so I did, and I got elected for Speaker. And the Congress of the Republic of Texas elected me Speaker. I was Speaker of the House of Representatives for the Republic of Texas for 1.5 years before I had to leave Texas on a contract for New York. And I was in New York for about the last 1.5 years, and then in Canada for about 6 months. Over the years, I've learned that we're under martial law, or all courts are corporate commercial courts in business to make a profit. All courts are banks and leverage the filing fees. All judges and prosecutors are getting royalties from every case they hear. There is no real justice in the courts. They will slap whoever violated your rights, but it will be behind the scenes. The best way to deal with our public servants is administratively. Over the years, I've learned that there's no de jure government operating on the planet except for the Republic of Texas. Almost all laws are color of law. All countries are under martial law, and they've been set up, everybody, for slavery. Do you want to be a slave? Is there a price for your freedom that you're not prepared to pay? Something you got to think about. At what point are you willing to draw the line? And you can't fight every battle. You know, that's one thing I tell people is you can't fight every battle. There's too many of them. And that's why I do this, because I need help. I mean, if we can actually, we can assert our sovereignty again and all become sovereigns, but it takes more than me, okay? I can be a sovereign, but I need help, you know? And so that's why I tell people. The burden is on you to assert your rights. If you do not assert your rights, you lose them. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. That's the bottom line. Because we're under martial law, the courts presume everything. Presumption, remember, it's all color of law. If you go on the attack, you can defeat their presumptions. If this procedure is followed properly, the system will deal with any criminals that are exposed. Okay? Again, you lay the foundation and to the point that they don't want to talk to you no more. And that's what you want to do. Because we're under martial law, if you're already under attack, it becomes very difficult to deal with. It gets more difficult the further along you are in our process. There's a maxim of common law that says that if you have an argument that's material to your case, and if you don't plead it at the proper time, you lose that opportunity. It's gone forever, okay, in that case. So sometimes it's best just to get the issue resolved and then start laying your foundation, okay? Just get the thing resolved. Because you know, it depends on how belligerent you want to be. You can still do it. Chances are they'll still convict their straw man. Yes, did you have something?
I'll wait.
Okay. It's much easier if you attack them before they ever see you. Much, much easier. You got to go on the attack, okay? All of this stuff, their presumptions are based on information we provided. It's our own fault, okay? Our parents went out and got that birth certificate. We went out and got that social security number. We went out and got that driver's license and all the rest of that stuff. And so it's our own fault. So we have to correct the record. They've been good teachers for me because I do to them what they do to me. I grind them through my system. I presume they're guilty and make them prove they're not. Yeah, oh yeah. Oh, I have fun with it, quite frankly. I started out by filing commercial liens in 2005. I filed a $15 million commercial lien against the IRS and all the deputy commissioners, and Mark Everson resigned. He was the commissioner at the time. I remember George Bush had him on the White House lawn, and he said, "It's the toughest job in the country." Yeah, so I filed a $500 million commercial lien against J.P. Morgan Chase Bank and all of their executive officers. That's about 35 people. I filed a $500 million commercial lien against Wilshire Credit Corporation, all of their executive officers. That's about 5. I filed a $1 billion commercial lien against a law firm in Phoenix and all of their executive officers. I filed a $15 million commercial lien against Capital One Bank and all of their executive officers. I sent numerous invoices to the U.S., and they owe me approximately $2 billion. The reason I'm telling you all this, I believe commercial liens work and are valid. You know, I go into court and I say, I got this commercial lien. It's like they don't want to talk about that. It's like, don't even go there. They don't want to talk about it. Those things are valid. That's why they don't want to talk about it. I'm telling you. If it was a bogus, if it was a fraud, they'd be saying, that's a bunch of garbage. You know what I mean? But they don't want to talk about it. They never, ever go there. It's like the stuff with sovereignty. When you bring that up, they never, ever go there. Anyways, the reason I'm telling you this is I believe they work and are valid, but you're operating in their system and they are thieves. There's no honor among thieves. I started filing criminal complaints and I saw much better results. And the ones that I was filing were defective in a lot of ways compared to the ones I do today. I mean, I've really learned a lot of things, and my criminal complaints today, and I'll tell you, that's why I got the Pennsylvania Attorney General removed. And so I've filed hundreds of notice and demands and dozens of criminal complaints. And most of my criminal complaints can be seen at Pinal County Recorder's website. You go there and do a search, you'll find hundreds of documents that I've filed. After filing criminal complaints, I've seen numerous people resigned or removed. 2 U.S. attorneys for Arizona, 2 U.S. attorneys for Texas, U.S. Attorney General, IRS Commissioner Mark Everson, Alberta Attorney General, now Alberta Premier, okay? I filed, and a second Alberta Attorney General, I filed a criminal complaint, this lawsuit. They dismissed my lawsuit. And so I sent my latest notice and demand to the Alberta Attorney General, and I went through and I systematically showed how they perjured their oath of office by getting that thing dismissed. And now the Alberta Attorney General's gone, and the Premier has announced that he's not running for re-election. So I'm telling you, we have good, honorable servants. Again, if you don't complain, you know, in the Nazi war trials after the Second World War, okay, they got Goering in there, and they said to him, under what authority did you do what you're doing? And you know what he said? He said, nobody complained. Okay? This is the power of what I'm doing. I'm complaining. They have to do something about it, because otherwise it makes them worse than those Nazi war criminals that got hung. Okay? They have to do something about it. And so I can't tell you how many people I've had removed. I've seen positive results in Ontario after filing a lawsuit. You know, in Ontario, I filed a lawsuit over social insurance numbers, called in Canada. And it was basically, I was told I had to get one. And I put that in this lawsuit. And within weeks, they announced on national TV that nobody is mandatory, nobody has to get a social insurance number. And what they did is they, even today, there's a guy that I know that was telling me how he used reverse psychology on CRA, which is Canada Revenue Agency. Okay? And he went and called them up and said, my son thinks he doesn't have to get a social security number. Would you tell him the statute that requires him to get a social security number, or social insurance number, I'm sorry? Okay? My son thinks he doesn't have to get a social insurance number. Would you tell me what statute it is that says that he has to get one? And they said, sure, no problem. Let me do some research and I'll get back with you. And they called him up the next day and they said, you know what? He doesn't have to get a social insurance number. And then they said, well, can you tell his employer that? And they said, sure. And so they had the employer call CRA up, and CRA told him there's no requirement for him to get a social insurance number. He doesn't have to have one. And by definition, if you think about it, you're a non-taxpayer when that happens. And I believe it was because I filed that lawsuit and put that in place. And so, you know, we really do have good and honorable people working for us. Again, it's up to us to complain. Okay? We got to bring up the issue. If you don't bring up the issue, then, you know, whose fault is it? You know, we go and give them all this evidence that we're a slave, and then we refuse to complain about it. So I guess you like being a slave. You know, I don't know. That's my attitude. So again, it comes, the burden's on us to correct the situation. It's up to we the people. So this happened, 2 lawsuits in Canada. U.S. attorneys removed. In Arizona, I filed criminal complaints. I don't know if you remember way back when. How much longer we got, Larry? 2 minutes? Okay. Way back when, I went and remember when the Democrats were stirring up all that ruckus when George Bush removed a bunch of U.S. attorneys that were Democrats? Well, there was one of them by the name of Paul Clements. No, not Paul Clements. Paul Charlton in Phoenix that was a Republican. They didn't complain about him. I had just filed a criminal complaint against him, and they eased him out of it. And 2 U.S. attorneys in Arizona, 2 U.S. attorneys in Texas. What happened is I filed criminal complaints. I went and filed a criminal complaint against Wells Fargo Bank because they were compelling the disclosure of a social security number to get a bank account. And I sent it to the U.S. attorney, and then I didn't care what he did. After 30 days, I filed a criminal complaint against the U.S. attorney for perjury of oath and all that. 2 of them. You know, the next thing you know, they're gone. Then I figured, well, I can't get them all removed. So I figured I'll just give up on that one. But now the banks have changed, okay? So something happened, and those U.S. attorneys left. And what I did is, a part of that was I sent dear perjurer letters to every member of the U.S. Senate and about 135 members of Congress, and that was one of the things I said in there because they're compelling the disclosure of a social security number to get a bank account. But now I guess it's changed. And they don't necessarily demand a social security number. But so again, if you don't complain, nothing's going to change. Okay? Are we about done? Okay. So I can't tell you, it just goes on and on. I mean, Alberta Gonzales, in my petition for a writ of certiorari to the U.S. Supreme Court, I attached a criminal complaint against Alberta Gonzales. 2 weeks later, he resigned. He said he was hiring attorneys to defend himself against the Department of Justice. And then what happened is the U.S. Solicitor General waived their right to respond in that case. And then in a petition for rehearing, I filed a criminal complaint against the U.S. Solicitor General. His name was Paul Clements. 2 weeks later, he's out of there. I'm telling you, it's amazing. I'm telling you, you have no idea. You bring up the right issues. You got to bring up the right issues. And when you're right, and they know you're right, I mean, if there's even a hint of impropriety, they're history. Okay, we'll take a little break for 5 minutes right now. Matter of fact, why don't we break for lunch? It's lunchtime. We'll break and we'll come back. I attached a petition, or I attached a criminal complaint against Alberta Gonzales to a petition for a writ of certiorari to the U.S. Supreme Court, and 2 weeks later, Alberta Gonzales resigned. I think I already went to that, and then Paul Clements, he resigned, and after I filed a criminal complaint against him. I filed criminal complaints against the court clerk for addressing mail to me with a zip code. The clerk disappears, and all future mail comes without a zip code. This is a procedure that I developed over the last 5 years. I sent a registered letter to my public servant. When my public servant violates my rights, I file a criminal complaint against him and send it to his boss. After 30 days, I don't care what happens. In other words, his boss might be investigating it. I don't care. This is when I presume, okay? And I presume his boss isn't going to do anything. And so after 30 days, I make up another criminal complaint with the public servant and his boss as a co-conspirator after the fact, and I send it to their boss's boss. And so when I say I file a criminal complaint, I don't file it in any court or anything like that. I send it to their boss. Anyways, after 30 days, I don't care what their boss's boss does. I presume he's not going to do anything either. And I make up another criminal complaint against the public servant, his boss, and their boss's boss, and I send it on to the next one up the chain of command. And I do that all the way up to the president or the queen. And I don't care what they do. So what happens essentially is by the time I'm done, everybody and their brother knows about this. And the next thing you know, the guy disappears. It's amazing how that works. And you know, I always use registered mail. When I send a criminal complaint, I send their boss one of these notice and demands, and I just add one paragraph at the end, and it says, I hereby demand that you remove your criminal, you know, and that's it. And then the next criminal complaint, I attach that to the criminal complaint as part of the evidence, saying that he's got notice and he's not doing anything and he's an accomplice after the fact and all the rest of it. You see what I'm saying?
So
And
there's no statutory
their statutes don't mean anything to me.
on how soon
I couldn't care about their statutes. It means nothing to me. I just keep going up the chain of command to the President of the United States or the Queen, and I always make sure they get a copy. I used to add the Queen, you know, accuse her of perjury and treason, send her a copy, and in this case Barack Obama. You know, but I saw a letter actually that a friend of mine got back from the Queen when he was complaining about all the criminals in the system, and then plus he congratulated her on her jubilee, eh? and her clerk, her executive secretary sent a letter back saying the Queen really enjoyed his letter and all that. Right? So I thought that was kind of interesting. Yes,
the Queen of Canada or UK?
she's the Queen of Canada.
Oh, it's the same.
Yeah, that too. Okay, so what happens is when I get to whoever the final criminal complaint is against, then I record the whole package, and that's the part that I'll send to the Queen or the President. And what happens, and recording is very powerful. If you notice my traffic stop lawful notice and my photo ID affidavit that I use And my notice and demand to corporate commercial agents, they're up here. You're welcome to look at those. If you want one, I'll email them to you. But I need those because I use them to serve them on people. Anyways, they're all recorded, okay? And that's very, very important, okay? Because once they're recorded, they're public policy, okay? And this is something I happen to have some firsthand knowledge of because I've worked in aviation for 35 years. And so I deal with regulations as far as aviation's concerned all day, every day. And that's how they make regulations. That's exactly how they make regulations. Is they put out notice, and then after 30 days, or sometimes it's longer if they give you more time, but the bottom line is they put out notice, and then it becomes a regulation. And you can make your own law in their system by doing that. I am telling you, you have no idea the power you have. You don't know who you are. Yes?
When you talk about recording, you mean like with the county?
Yeah, I record it, the county recorder. The one I use is in Arizona. There's one in, you can record them here in Texas, but they're more expensive. They cost like $4 a page. Arizona, it's $1 a page. It's $13 for the first 5 pages or first 8 pages, I can't remember. And then it's $1 a page after that, which is quite reasonable. And, and so I use Arizona. There's also supposed to be a county in South Carolina or North Carolina, something like that, that is comparable to that. So I don't know. But, but I do it in Arizona, and it's very powerful, okay? You essentially make your own law.
Do you file the criminal complaint? Do you record it right after you do it or after 30 days?
When it gets to the, what happens is, remember what I'm doing is I make a criminal complaint and I send it to their boss with a notice and demand, right? And then after 30 days, I don't care what their boss does, I make another criminal complaint, put that whole package of paperwork together and send it to their boss's boss. You see what I'm saying? So by the time I'm done, you know, I mean, I could easily have, I'll definitely have over 100 pages worth of stuff, okay? And it's all part of the evidence trail. And so I'll put that whole package together and file that into the county after it's done. Okay, so I only record it once. And what you do, if you look at my criminal complaints, you, like the actual affidavit, you know, might have 18 pages, and then you got all this evidence you're attaching to it. So you just, first page of the evidence, you write in 19, next page 20, okay? You hand write in all of the pages so that you tie them all together, and then when you record it, the county recorder puts their seal on it, and it tells you how many pages there are. You see what I'm saying? And then all the pages are sequentially numbered. It all ties it all in together real nice. And, you know, so yes.
How can you do it without paying money to do it?
Well, yeah, you pretty well got to pay money. In the county recorder, they want, you know, the filing fee. And, yeah, I just go ahead and pay them. They make, you know, I mean, that pays for their service, and I mean, that's worth something, you know. They put it on the internet, you know. I mean, anybody can go there and look up my stuff that I've done. You just go on the internet. We could go and look at it right now if you wanted. And, you know, so they provide a service that I think is worth it. And so I don't mind paying, especially if it's reasonable. In Texas, it's $4 a page, so I think that's a little bit pricey. But, you know, in Arizona, it's not. At any rate, so after 30 days, after you record it, it becomes public policy. That's very powerful. You can make your own law. When I send them a notice and demand, I usually get no response at all. That means they've acquiesced. If there's something that you're saying that is not true, they have a duty to point it out. And if they're idiots, they will say, well, this is wrong, and I make sure that I'm right. And so then if they come back and say, you know, that's why, you know, as an idiot that said, well, we're going to enforce our traffic safety laws, and if you don't have a driver's license, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. Well, that's great evidence. Out of their own mouth, you know. So one of the first documents I sent out to the Pinal County Recorder, and she sent me back a short letter back that said, thank you for your document. I put it on file for future reference, and then she signed it personally, and it said, most respectfully, okay? I mean, that's a perfect answer. A judge in Texas, that's a Johnson County judge that I was telling you about, sent me a certified copy of his oath of office and surety bond. That's a perfect response. 9 times out of 10, I don't get anything. The Edmonton City Police sent me a letter. And this, if you look at it, it's right here. It's a perfect response. It says, this will confirm your letter was received. I reviewed the contents and note there are no articulated complaints of misconduct or complaints of service with respect to any of the members. And as such, this matter is classified as information only. Well, yeah, that's exactly what it is. And so that's it, right? I mean, that's perfect. They're saying we got it, and we're putting it down for information only. We're not denying anything you're saying. You see what I'm saying? And the U.S. Solicitor General sent me a letter, and I got a copy of that up there if you want to pass it around. I sent him, and this is a blown-up copy, and I'm going to zoom in on it here. Whoa, what the heck happened there? Wow. I guess. Wow, that's weird. Okay, well, if you notice, it says Glen Winningham, House of Fern, right? This is how, if you've done your homework, this is how they'll answer you, and you'll know that it's working. Okay? Because I always tell them I'm Glen Winningham, House of Fern, and I always tell them that unless you want to be guilty of mail fraud, and Title 18, United States Code, Section 1342 says that if they send mail, it's a felony to send mail to an address that is not a quote-unquote proper mailing address or a fictitious mailing address, okay? You'd have to read it and see what it says exactly. I don't have it in here. But, so what I do in my document is I tell them, my proper mailing address is this. And if you send it to any other address, you intend to be guilty of mail fraud. And I'll tell you, I've got this wording down. I tweaked it here and there for a long time, and now it works every time. And so right here. So you notice. Does anybody know what the Queen's last name is? Does anybody know? Yes. Actually, very few people know that. It's House of Windsor. But actually, her married name's Mountbatten because Prince Philip, his last name's Mountbatten. But she is the House of Windsor. Most people have no idea that, but the point is that that's common law, okay? The family name is never mentioned at common law, okay? That's why my name is Glen Winningham, House of Fern, right? The family name's not mentioned, and they know that. That's why they always say, Dear Mr. Winningham, okay? They know the family name's not mentioned at common law. They're telling me they're addressing a letter to a member of the sovereignty, except they're using that title of a nobility Mr. But at least it's Dear Mr. Winningham. You see what I'm saying? I mean, they know, and this is how they always come back, okay? And so it's Dear Mr. Winningham. I guess we won't be looking at that one. Negative responses. The Pennsylvania Attorney General sent me a letter making all sorts of legal determinations and presumptions and said they would enforce their law. And if anybody wants that package, I got all that stuff digital. I just keep it digital. In March 2010, I filed a criminal complaint, sent it to the Chief Judge of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court and the U.S. Attorney in Pennsylvania. And on the 22nd of February, I checked the Pennsylvania Attorney General's website, and it says William H. Ryan Jr. becomes acting Pennsylvania Attorney General. See, look at this, okay? So they removed his butt, and he's out digging ditches somewhere because he can't get a job that requires a bond. And they have an acting Attorney General there now. And I guarantee you that manure rolls downhill. And I guarantee you that they've told, you know, whoever else that be careful about this. You see what I'm saying? I guarantee you it'll never happen again. And there's the acting Attorney General. Huh?
Another criminal. You can tell by what kind of thing.
Well, maybe, but at any rate, I mean, I presume he's honest. And until he proves otherwise, he's honest. You see what I'm saying? You got to build a case against him, give him an opportunity to perjure his oath. Until then, he's an honorable man, and until I have proof otherwise, he's an honorable man. That's all I can say. I mean, I would expect them to do the same for me, you know. Anyways, the Ohio Director of Public Safety, Henry Guzman, sent me a letter making all sorts of legal determinations and presumptions. In August 2009, I filed a criminal complaint and sent it to the Ohio Attorney General, the Chief Judge of the Ohio Supreme Court, the State Bar, and the U.S. Attorney. on the 22nd of February, I checked the Ohio Public Safety website, and it says that on January 2011, Thomas P. Charles was appointed Director of Public Safety. And Thomas P. Charles was former Ohio Inspector General for the last 13 years. Now that tells me, I mean, if anybody knows the law, the Inspector General does, okay? And so they wanted someone in there to make sure that doesn't happen again. And so here's their website. And this Thomas P. Charles is from the Inspector General's office, is now Director of the Ohio Public Safety. So again, if you don't complain, nothing's ever going to change. You got to complain. You got to bring up the right issues. You got to lay a foundation, bring up the right issues. You got to prove your case. I first started doing this when I was going through a foreclosure in Arizona, and this is how it all started. And this, I've got to tell you, it scared the life out of me. Okay, it scared me to death. I was grabbing at straws and just doing everything I could. I decided what happened is I was going through a foreclosure in Arizona. I paid off my house with a promissory note, and the banksters stole the money, and then they stole my house. So I decided to arrest the auctioneer, and when they were selling my house on the courthouse steps. So when you witness a felony, right, they were criminally converting my name and my address and all the rest of it, you can make an arrest. And so I called the police to take custody of the felon. The police started building a case against me for disturbing the peace. I saw that happening, and so I started sending noticing demands to the police officers, the chief of police, the town attorney, the judge. The town of Florence, which is where this took place, sent their straw man a summons. So I attached the summons along with my notice and demands to an affidavit of criminal complaint, and I recorded it, and I sent it back to them. I'm a kind of in-your-face sort of guy, you got to understand. So then I sent notice and demands to the Pinal County Sheriff, the Maricopa County Sheriff, the Casa Grande Chief of Police, anybody, because I knew they were going to issue a warrant, right? So anybody that could potentially have anything to do with me, or the straw man, I sent them notice and demands. And Arizona Attorney General, the Chief Judge of the Supreme Court, I said, you have a criminal racketeering enterprise operating in the town of Florence, and I hereby demand that you regulate your subordinates. Because it was a judge, right, that was issuing this stuff. And so anyways, I sent out a bunch of notice and demands. And these were only like 5-6 pagers. They were pretty small compared to what they do now. So what happened is I called up the court, and I knew they'd issued a warrant because the clerk told me they'd issued a warrant. And the warrant has to season for a period of time, and I think it varies from one state to the next, but I think it's at least a month, and some places up to like 90 days. Anyways, so it was on the Memorial Day weekend, and it was, which is May in 2005, and it was on a Friday, and my coworkers, I came in after lunch, and my coworkers said, there's a big guy here looking for you. And I figured, oh, I bet I know who that is. And so I left work early that day, and what happened is as I was driving out of the parking lot, I saw this yellow van that was all caged in inside driving in, okay? And so it's the important thing to note here is that the cops wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole, okay? They had to send a bounty hunter. I couldn't notice all the bounty hunters. And so it was on a Friday, and what they do is they keep you in jail for 3 days. If you don't understand the law, you can demand to see a judge now. Get his butt out of bed. I want to see him now. And they have to get him up. Now, some people say, well, that wouldn't happen here. Well, if you do it, I mean, yes, maybe it'll happen. It won't happen here once. But if you complain about it, I guarantee it won't happen again. They'll get his butt out of bed. And you get the judge's butt out of bed, and then you start railing on him, I guarantee you, manure rolls downhill. I got to be careful about my language since there's ladies in here and everything. But manure rolls downhill. And so, anyways, they told me this big guy was looking for me. I left work early that day and decided to take a week's vacation. I had already had a lawsuit going. Okay, I knew it was coming. I was preparing a lawsuit. It takes time. You got to think about that kind of stuff so you get all your stuff in there, because it's a one-crack shot. You know, you got to get all your arguments in there. So, anyways, I was preparing my lawsuit. I took a week's vacation. I finished up my lawsuit. I filed the lawsuit the following Tuesday, which was the next normal business day, and then I sent another notice and demand to the Chief Judge of the Supreme Court of Arizona, and I ordered her, I told her there's a criminal racketeering enterprise operating on the town of Florence. I said that their hired thugs were looking for me under a warrant for the arrest of their straw man, and I demanded that she quash the warrant for the arrest of their straw man vessel, quote, because we all know that the corporate commercial agents, the police in brackets, are too stupid to tell the difference between a straw man vessel and a sovereign living soul, unquote. And I said, furthermore, I have filed this lawsuit, you're named it, this is the case number, and you'll be served with it soon enough, and if you fail to quash the warrant for this straw man vessel, it'll be further proof of your dereliction of duty to regulate your subordinates. And she quashed the warrant. Actually, I don't think she quashed it, but she issued a restraining order, because they never ever came looking for me after that. Okay? I worked there for 9 months after that, and this lawsuit was going on. Never saw anybody. Okay? Anyways, the Attorney General responded for the Chief Judge in the lawsuit, and the Attorney General said it was perfectly appropriate that I petition the Chief Judge to get the warrant quashed. So that warrant is still out there, and I'll tell you more about that later, but they don't come looking for me. Matter of fact, I was in a car accident a year ago last December. Some lady made an illegal left turn and T-boned me, broadsided me, right? Well, I got a 3/4 ton 4x4 truck. So, I mean, it didn't do much damage. It did enough, but it totaled out her car. Bumper was laying in the road. I mean, it was like totaled. And, but meanwhile, the cops had to come because there was a lot of damage, you know. And so, the Pinal County Sheriff, right? Florence is the county seat for the Pinal County Sheriff, for the Pinal County, and it was the Pinal County Sheriff's Department that came, right? Well, the first thing I told them is, there's no such thing as a driver's license under Texas law. Why would I want one of those? I don't have one of those. And so, anyways, and I heard the county sheriffs talking to each other, because the first thing that happened when that happened is he calls out his supervisor, right? And the county sheriffs are sitting there talking, saying, oh, I guess there's no such thing as a driver's license under Texas law. Anyways, so then we're talking, and they're saying that, well, all persons have to have a driver's license in Arizona. And I said, I'm not a person. And that was the end of that discussion. Never talked about that after. I'm telling you. They know. Anyways, so they pulled up the warrant. Okay? They pulled up this warrant, and I heard them talking about it on the radio, and they were reading off this warrant, and they said, but we don't want to extradite. Well, I was in Pinal County. It was the Pinal County Sheriff that was there. Where's the extradition? I'm sorry, I'm missing something here. You see what I'm saying? I think they didn't want to have anything to do with it, and they never did arrest me or anything, okay? They just said, you need to take care of this, eh? And it's a $350 fine, but it's a matter of principle, yeah. So I sent them notice and demands is what I did, but I did take care of it. Anyways, I'm actually going to send a judge a void judgment, a criminal complaint, and I'm going to throw in some stuff about void judgments, which you'll see in this case in my presentation, because that's exactly what he issued. He didn't have any authority. It's a void judgment, and I'm going to just dump on him, and maybe I'll get him removed. Who knows? I guess. Anyways, so keep moving here. On the 11th of May, 2009, I received a photo radar ticket from the Arizona Department of Public Safety. That was after, oh no, that was from my son. My son was driving my truck in Arizona. My son's a teenager, you know. He was at the time about 18, you know, riding around like teenagers do. They sent me, he was driving my truck, they sent me the photo radar ticket. I rejected their offer of contract, sent notice and demands to the chief judge and the district judge, or the court, the judge and the mayor, and the case disappeared. And the reason I know it disappeared is because in the when I got in that car accident, right? There's no history, nothing pulled up on that, okay? Anyways, then on the 22nd of February, this was after that car accident, right? I had to rent a car because my truck was in the body shop. And so that's the only time I ever pull out the straw man's driver's license, okay? Otherwise, I never give it to the police. I don't have one. I don't. The straw man has one, but they don't ask for the straw man's driver's license. So I don't have one. And so what happens is when you rent a car, they won't rent your car unless you pull out the straw man's driver's license. And so I had to pull it out. So I got a photo radar ticket, and they contacted the car rental company, and the car rental company gave them the address and everything, and so they sent it to me. And so what happened is I sent notice and demands to the DPS officer, the Director of Public Safety, the Attorney General, and the judge, okay? And then I felt like just being real belligerent at the time, and so I didn't even wait 30 days. I filed criminal complaints against them all for perjury of oath, treason, sedition, etc. You know what happened? They canceled the photo radar program. I'm serious. And Arizona Attorney General Terry Goddard is no longer in office. And he's replaced by Tom Horn, a former judge. Okay, now who's going to know the law except an attorney, former judge? Okay, and they sent me notice that they're canceling the straw man's driver's license. Well, whoop-de-doo. I don't even care. I mean, quite frankly, that thing's a boat anchor around my neck. And the thing doesn't expire till I turn 65, which is 15 years from now. So who cares? Go ahead and cancel it. I just pull it out when I want to rent a car anyways. So I'll still rent cars, and meanwhile, you'll have me out of your system. That's great. That's, you know, excellent. So here's the website where it says Arizona shuts down the freeway speed cameras. And whoops. Oh, I guess it's, yep. I used to have that here. That was actually an image of the thing from the Inspector General in Arizona saying they wanted me to come in because they want to verify that I'm a U.S. citizen, okay? And so they need me to bring a passport or something like that to prove I'm a U.S. citizen, because otherwise they're going to cancel my driver's license. Because in my criminal complaint, I put in there, I'm not one of your low-life scumbag U.S. citizens. You see what I'm saying? So cancel the thing, I don't care. I guess I copied this off of my hard drive, so I'll bet you something happened with that, and that's why it didn't show up. Anyways, and so that's what, this all was precipitated from the car accident that I had, and then Nelson's traffic stop. My son Nelson used to drive that truck. It was a Dodge 4x4, and a black one, a 97. And he used to, you know, he's a teenager, rods around, does all that stuff. And like here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we lived here for a couple of years, and he would get phone calls, or not phone calls, he'd get stopped by the cops every once in a while. You know, I mean, man, he used up so many tires in that thing. He was always filling the tires, I'm sure. But anyways, he'd get stopped by the cops, and they'd always ask him, who owns this truck? And he'd say, oh, my dad does. Never give him a ticket. Never give him a ticket. I'm telling you, this stuff is really powerful. You have no idea, you know. So they were worried about locking horns with me, I think. Anyways, in July of 2010, the city of Lethbridge stopped me and gave their straw man a ticket for no driver's license. There's no requirement in Alberta for a living soul to get a driver's license. I filed 3 criminal complaints against them. Those are all in the lawsuit up there. And then I filed a petition of right with the criminal complaints attached. The perjurer on the bench entered a plea for their straw man and set it down for trial. I told them in my criminal complaints I do not take orders from criminals. I do not appear for your show trial, and I didn't. And they convicted their straw man, and the fine was $172, and I can show you that's all in my briefcase. That's out in my truck. I'd have to go bring that in. But I can show you that and pass it around if you want to say it. Anyways, it was the same as what was on the ticket, and I called up the clerk and asked if they had issued a warrant, and they said no. And they said they would be handled by motor vehicle department. In other words, their only remedy in Alberta is that if you want to renew the straw man's driver's license or get vehicle registration for the straw man, they make you pay the fine before they'll let you do that. Well, I don't want their driver's license and I don't want their registration, so whoop-de-doo, you know. That's it. That's all they do. And so that's okay with me. If you read the bottom of the citation, it says if you fail to respond, if you fail to respond to this offense notice as required by law by the appearance date indicated above, or if you plead not guilty and fail to appear in person or by agent on your trial date, you will be deemed not to dispute the charge, and you may be convicted of the offense in your absence without a hearing. If you're convicted until the fine plus any late payment charges are paid in full, you will not be allowed to obtain or renew a driver's license or motor vehicle license. Well, whoop-de-doo. Gee, that just breaks me all up. And actually, I got stopped 3 times in Alberta. The second time I got stopped was by a Calgary police, and that's when I told them that look, if you're going to violate my rights, then you better be prepared to go all the way and take me over there and blow my brains out, because by the time I'm done with you, you're going to wish you did, and I'll do it all within the law. And we actually talked for quite a while. I showed him my photo ID affidavit, which is up there, and that's all I gave him. I didn't give him a driver's license, and he asked for registration insurance. I says, well, I might have, but have you got a court order? And he says, no. And he says, but if you don't give it to me, I'll seize your truck. And I said, well, you have a gun, so you might be able to do that, but you need to be prepared if you're going to violate my rights to take me over there and blow my brains out, because by the time I'm done with you, you're going to wish you did. And he never seized my truck too, by the way. Anyways, it went back and forth. You know, after the first couple minutes, there was like 3 cops cars there. The first time when I got stopped in Lethbridge, all these cars were there, and they had their cherries going, and these cops running around, and all the cops came up and talked to me and all this, and so I was sitting there making notes of names and stuff like that. So all their names were in the criminal complaints, right? Well, the second time in Calgary, the only cop that came to talk to me was the guy that stopped me in the first place, right? And his supervisors wouldn't even come anywhere near me, but I saw them parked over in these different places around, and so every once in a while he'd take my stuff and go back and talk to his boss and then come back up. And no cherries. There was no cherries anywhere. I'm telling you, it's a learning curve, you know. You got to train them, you know. Anyways, so what happened ultimately is I told him, I says, under your statutes, I'm not required to have a driver's license or any of this stuff. I said, it's all for corporations. And I was just coming back from a private information share I'd done in Kelowna. And so what happened is I had all of this stuff in the back of my truck. And so I pulled it out and I started showing him the PowerPoint slides about the Alberta statutes and stuff like that. And I said, here, in your Traffic Safety Act, it's a person that's required to do it. And here, in your Interpretation Act, it's a person's a corporation. I said, it's not me. And he took that back to his supervisor. And then in a few minutes, he came back with my paperwork and he says, you're free to go. Have a nice day. And that was the end of it. And then another time I got stopped, it was by an Alberta sheriff on Highway 2, which is a big freeway in Alberta. And what happened is that guy was under stress, eh? And I was trying to tell him about the stuff I'd served, and he said, I don't care, because I'd served a bunch of stuff on his boss, right? He says, I don't care. And then I said, well, your statutes say that only corporations, I don't care. And so it turned into a shouting match. You know, we were yelling at each other. And that's when I started making notes, and I said, if you're going to violate my rights, then you just better take me over there and blow my brains out, because by the time I'm done with you, you're going to wish you did, and I'll do it all within the law. And then he said, no thanks. And all he got was my photo ID affidavit, and he went and he asked me, is that the correct address? Yeah. And the address on there is non-existent anymore, quite frankly, but I don't care. He didn't care. Why should I care? Anyways, so then he went and made up a ticket and gave it to me, and I was writing down his name and everything I could get anyways, and date and time. And then I went and filed a criminal complaint against him, and I sent it to the Queen. So I'll bet you that he's not even working for him now. I don't know. But I never got stopped after that, so maybe they put me in their database or something, you know, leave this guy alone. At that point, I knew that they already had me in their database, because he stopped me and he was, you know, kind of belligerent right off the bat. You know what I mean? And because in my paperwork, what I did with the Lethbridge police is I told them, I said, as long as they honor their oath of office, I have no idea what they get paid, but in my opinion, it's not enough. He said, but when they perjure their oath of office, they get the well-deserved title of pig. And then I said, the pigs did this, the pigs did that, the pigs did this, you know, in my criminal complaint. So you know, what happened is when I got stopped in Calgary, they told me, they said, first of all, I told them, I don't want you to take this personal. You know, I want you to know that I appreciate the work you do. As long as you honor your oath of office, I have no idea what you get paid. In my opinion, it's not enough. But you know, if you don't honor your oath of office, then we're going to have a problem. Essentially, is what I said. Anyways, when he ultimately let me go, he said, I appreciate your comments about appreciating the work we do, because you know, I've been working here for 12 years and all that other stuff. You see what I'm saying? So I mean, that's an important thing. Is tell them that you appreciate the work they do. I mean, we do need people to hunt down murderers and thieves. And I know I couldn't do that, okay? And so I appreciate the work they do as far as that's concerned. It's just they need to know where it ends, where their authority ends. That's what they need to know. And that's part of what we need to do as we the people, is educate them about that. You know, that's our duty. And once we do, you know, word travels fast. It's amazing how that'll work. And so anyways, as far as the Alberta stuff, what the ticket says and all the rest of it and their remedy is just proof that it's no more than a commercial transaction, and they don't have any authority, and they know it. Anyways, I got to hit the restroom real quick. Why don't we take a little short 5-minute break? There are at least 2 and possibly more classes of citizenship in all common law countries, and the government has made perfectly good laws that are technically correct 99% of the time. Because we have all given our servants, the government, the right to presume certain things, the burden's on us now to defeat those presumptions. The best way to defeat any presumption is to go on the attack. Presumptions are taken in martial law. The fact they're presuming anything is proof that you're in a martial law jurisdiction, and they have no authority. Right now, we've provided the government with reason to believe we're not sovereign. The government is operating on that assumption based on prima facie evidence that we ourselves provided. We have to build a prima facie case that is admissible as evidence in court that we are sovereign. In today's world, in order to be truly sovereign, you must be prepared to force the issue up to and including court. In Rome, they had slaves because they were not prepared to live free or die. In the modern world, you do not have to die for your freedom, but the attitude helps. So, number 1 rule is educate yourself. We're in this position because our parents and our grandparents did not understand the issues. Study out the issues. Most lawyers do not understand the law. You cannot expect a lawyer to be involved in this. They will get disbarred if they did. According to former Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, Earl Warren, 75 to 90% of all trial lawyers are either incompetent, dishonest, or both. All lawyers are also officers of the court. When you have an officer of the court representing you in court, you've turned yourself into a ward of the court. And a ward of the court's an imbecile. The ultimate responsibility rests with you. If you have, see that thing about the belligerent claimant, remember it said you cannot have a lawyer claim your rights for you. You know why? Because if you hire a lawyer, you're saying I am incompetent. So if you're incompetent, you can't assert those rights because by definition, you're incompetent. You're not competent to assert them. Anyways, the ultimate responsibility rests with you. You must accept responsibility for your own actions. You must prepare for your future. Sovereign citizens receive nothing from the government. If you do nothing, then you're at least partially responsible when they violate the next guy's rights. And that's the big reason why I do stuff, okay? Because if they violate my rights, it's not your responsibility to protect my rights, okay? It's mine. And when they violate my rights, I'm the one that's damaged. I'm the one that has to complain. And if I don't, then I'm responsible when they violate the next guy's rights. So I have to complain. It's my duty. All it takes for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing. And then, if you think about it, are they really good? If they're doing nothing, are they really good? The important thing is do something. It's not necessarily to use these documents the way they are. Make up your own if you want to. The following process builds a track record and a case showing your assertion and it's admissible as evidence in court. They already know you're sovereign. You just have to assert it. This procedure builds a case against your public servants for multiple felonies. They will never do anything that comes close to admitting that they've committed multiple felonies. If this procedure is done properly, the system will take care of your problem for you. You will rarely get a response. You have to learn to read between the lines if they do send you a response. If they do not send you a response, then they've acquiesced. I developed a system through this foreclosure that I had in Arizona and the subsequent disturbing the peace, and I have sent out hundreds of registered letters. It's a notice and demand, okay? It's called a notice and demand, okay? If you look on the document, notice is common law. You cannot hold them responsible until you give them notice. What do you think those speed limit signs are out there? They're notice. For all those entities that are subject to those rules and regulations, they're notice that, hey, these are the speed limit signs. If they don't put those signs out there, they cannot hold their entities responsible. Notice is common law. Sovereigns demand. You know, this is something Rice McLeod said, and I really didn't, it really hit home with me because I used to be in the Canadian Armed Forces. And I remember getting a piece of paper, and it had demand written across the top. And I was supposed to go do something. So I went and did whatever it was. But the point is that it never dawned on me what that was all about until Rice McLeod said sovereigns demand. And it's true. And that it further solidified to me the fact that the people of Canada are sovereign. You know, I mean, that was Canadian Armed Forces. And so a sovereign's demand. It's not negotiable or a request. It's a demand, and it's now. This is called administrative procedure. It's also common law. It gives notice to your authorities about your assertion and gives them an opportunity to rebut it. It defeats their presumptions, and that is extremely important. The oath of office acceptance, okay, that's the first line in that document, okay? If you look at those documents, you can look at them and you can follow through a lot of these steps, you'll see them. The oath of office acceptance, the oath is all we the people have. You get a copy of their oath or you give them an oath. I give them an oath. I used to get a copy, but that's kind of cumbersome and it takes time, and you know, I don't bother with that anymore. I just give them an oath. And the oath of office document that I give them is in there. The oath of office supersedes everything else. The oath of office is your trump card because that's what supersedes everything else, and that's where you can get them, by that oath. Equality unto the law is paramount, okay? That's essentially what that does is there's my brother. I come from a family of rabble-rousers, I got to tell you. My brother, you know, about 5 years ago, he cut up everything he had. Driver's license, everything. Any kind of ID or anything from the government, and cut it up and burned it all. And since then, you know, he's been, one time he was, they charged him, he was doing like 140 clicks and stopped him and charged him for no driver's license, all sorts of stuff, right? And so then he appeared in their show trial, and they put him in a nut house for 30 days. And so it gave him an opportunity to teach people about the law. Of course, everybody in there was nuts, but they put him in a nut house. And so after 30 days, they wrote a 4-page report and said, this guy's not nuts. Essentially, he just thinks differently than the rest of us. So then he went back to court, and they wanted a plea bargain with him, eh? And that's when he said, you threw me in that nut house for 30 days, and now you want a plea bargain with me? I want this case dismissed now. And he turned around and walked out, and the case got dismissed, okay? And so then there's been other times when he gets stopped. One time he got stopped in Red Deer, and they took him down and put him in jail. He spent 5 years in jail off and on, so he knows what it's like there, eh? And so they took him down and put him in jail, and he figured, well, I guess I'll make myself comfortable. First of all, they want to take his fingerprints, eh? And he says, no, you're not taking my fingerprints. And they said, yes, we are. And he said, no, you're not. And they said, yes, we are. And he says, well, I guess you got the guns, so if you want to break these fingers off and go and print them, then you're more than welcome to. But otherwise, no, you're not. And so then they said, follow me. And he was walking down this hallway, and there's a fingerprint room. They walked right on past the fingerprint room and put him in a jail cell. And he was there for 15 minutes, and then he said somebody from upstairs called down and said, get his butt out of here now. And so they kicked him out of there. It's amazing how that works. But and actually, that's pretty well what happens anytime now. Matter of fact, they don't even stop him. He doesn't have a driver's license and hasn't had one for 5-6 years, and they know it. And in fact, I was showing them how to do this administrative procedure when I was up there. But so, anyways, they don't even mess with them anymore. But the last time they stopped him, they had him in jail again, you know, about 15 minutes, and then they kicked him out of there. And you know, so they just like to play the little games once in a while. So the important thing is the idea of this equality under the law is paramount. The purpose of that is it defeats their thing about throwing people in a nut house, because they like to do that. That's one of their strategies, okay? And essentially what you're saying is, if you're going to throw me in the nut house, then you got to go there too. And so competence, incompetence, and representation. Remember, we talked about that already. First of all, they're making you incompetent. They're making legal determinations for you and stuff. That's saying that you're not competent, and they are. And so they cannot accuse you of being a person without representing you. And so that's what those paragraphs in there are talking about, is that you don't have authority to represent me, and if you think you're representing me, you're fired, and I am competent, and you're not. And that's the purpose of that. The copyright. You don't have to do a copyright, but I find it's very powerful. Now, I've never collected on that copyright, but let's face it, they're in commerce, and you can hurt them, okay? So there's a common law copyright, and I have brought that up in court, and they never, ever, ever want to talk about it, okay? That tells me it's powerful. And again, my commercial liens. You know what I do with my commercial liens? I just trump up all sorts of stuff. That's what they do. Think about it. That's what they do. They just fabricate stuff right out of thin air, right? So do I. I just fabricate. That's how I came up with $1 billion. What do you think? Do you think I'm going to actually come up with $1 billion worth of charges? I just come up with $1 billion worth of something, 100 million for this, and just come down with a list of receivables and send it to them. I mean, that's pretty simple. I mean, certainly you can have. What I'll do is like when I was getting letters from the IRS way back when, I'd circle Glenn W. Fern in all block capital letters, and then I'd say copyright violation, $10 million, unlawful legal determination, $10 million. And because my copyright says, first of all, it's $10,000 for any use. Okay, it's $1 million if it's for profit or gain, and it's always for profit or gain if you think about it. And then it's $10 million if it's for profit or gain more than 3 times in a year. Well, damn, one of their documents might have it 3 or 4 or 5 times in there. And so, man, now you're talking $50-60 million right off the bat, It doesn't take long to add up at that rate, And so I'll start going cha-ching, 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 and circling it and marking it up and saying, and I'll make a photocopy and I'll send them an invoice and all this stuff, eh? And, I'll tell you, where this really works good is like a collection agency or something like that. I'll tell you, you do that with them, and they're gone. I'll tell you, they don't want to talk to you at all. They're gone. And I've done that with other organizations, any commercial organization. They won't even touch you with a 10-foot pole because they know you can collect. These governmental corporations are a little harder, but that's not to say you can't do it. And the key is let's face it, you're going to have to go before one of their corporate commercial courts, and that's tough and all the rest of it. But what we're going to be talking about is de jure government, and if you can get your de jure government to indict them and convict them, then you got something that's got teeth. Let me tell you, you have no idea the power of that, and we'll be talking about that. But so anyways, the copyright is a major deterrent since they're in business to make a profit. And essentially, I actually did a copyright notice where it's a document that's recorded, and I tell them what the deal is. But what I do now is I don't think that's even necessary, because what you do in your notice and demand right there, you give them notice right there that these are my fees. It's like a menu when you go to a restaurant, okay? If you tell them that these are the fees for using these names, then and then they use it, well, they agreed to the fee. It's like going into a restaurant. They say the hamburger is this price, and you order a hamburger, then you agreed to pay the price. And so, anyways, the copyright is really powerful. There's a common law copyright, and I don't think you even have to do a copyright notice. I think you just, when you put it in a paper and you send it to somebody personally, and you have proof that he's got it, like an officer of the court served it on him and that kind of stuff. I mean, that's extremely powerful. Anyways, if they use the name, it's essentially an offer of contract, and you accept, I accept your offer of contract, here's your invoice. I always make them communicate under penalty of perjury, and that's really useful because they can't communicate under penalty of perjury because they lie all the time, and that just defeats everything they do. And then I let them know that I can hold them and their boss's boss, everybody and their brother up the chain of command personally responsible. And then zip codes, postal codes are martial law jurisdiction, and Title 18, Section 1342 is about fictitious mailing addresses. and I tell them that you intend to be guilty of mail fraud if you use anything but this address I'm giving you. And I'll tell you, yeah, I got to go get my briefcase. But you saw that letter from the U.S. Solicitor General. That's exactly what I told them, and they did it exactly like I told them. Anyways, I make it very clear up front that I'm not interested in being a surety or accommodation party. That's exactly what they're doing, okay? They're getting you to be the surety or accommodation party for their fictitious entity. I don't have a driver's license. Why would I want one of those? There's no such thing as a driver's license under Texas law. Besides, it's only corporations that are required to have one. And if they do not argue, then they've given you permission. The driver's license is color of law. There's no authority to require one, and I don't have one. Straw man might have one, but I don't. Picture ID. I make up my own picture ID. It's up front if you want to look at it. Land titles has a miscellaneous. That's in Canada. I usually record it in at the county recorders, and it works great, and it's no problem. As a matter of fact, I heard that they got Tim Curry kicked the bucket over there in Fort Worth, and now they'll record just about anything over there. I've never heard of that. I don't see why you couldn't do it, but I mean, I'm not sure how you're talking about that. I mean, there's. Yeah, well, I don't see a problem with that. Yeah, Again, yeah. I'd have to see exactly what you're trying to do. I mean, a bill of sale is a bill of sale. It's not usually public anyways. You know what I mean? But I will tell you that there's a guy in Canada that did a bill of exchange. And this is kind of interesting because what he did was the bank was trying to seize this vehicle, right? Because he was behind on the payments. And so what he did is he did a bill of exchange with a third party, okay? And he said he figured he had $5,000 worth of equity in the vehicle, and the vehicle was worth, he figured the bank owed the bank, about $4,000 or something like that. You see what I'm saying? So anyways, he did a bill of exchange for $5,000 worth of labor, where it says that I hereby, in exchange for $5,000 worth of labor, I grant you all of my legal and equitable title in this vehicle, okay? And what happened is the guy that did the labor was supposed to have done the labor. He was ready to go down to the bank and pay $4,000 and pay it off. You see what I'm saying? Anyways, he went down to the bank, showed him the bill of exchange, and said, I need to know what your interest is in this vehicle, right? Makes sense. Wants to know how much is owed on it. You see what I'm saying? The labor is done, and I need to know what your interest is in this vehicle. And so the bank looked at it and they said, come back and can you come back in half an hour? And he said, sure. So he went, had a coffee, came back in half an hour, and the bank signed the vehicle over to him. Yeah. Now that's Canada. I'm not sure how that would work here. That's how they did it in Canada. And but see, there's legal and equitable title, right? He had legal title, but the bank had equitable title. But what essentially happened, in my opinion, and what he thought too, was that because you're exchanging something real for something real, you're taking it out of the matrix. You see what I'm saying? And he said the registration on the vehicle was completely different when that happened too. And because you're exchanging something real for something real, it essentially takes it out of the matrix. When you're paying for it with commercial paper, then it's in the matrix. You see what I'm saying? Because it's not really paid for. Okay. Again, it comes down to a usufruct. Okay. Are you familiar with a usufruct? U-S-U-F-R-U-C-T. Look it up. Okay. We're going to be talking about usufructs. Okay. Think about it. No doubt. But if you look in your wallet, you notice that that Federal Reserve notes are a promissory note, right? Okay. Well, think about it. What happens when you pay for something with a promissory note? It's not really paid for, is it? And a usufruct is a type of a trust. Okay? And so therefore, what happens when you pay for something with a promissory note, that's why they're spelling your name in all block capital letters, because when you pay for something with a promissory note, it's not paid for. And so it's set up, you're setting up a trust, essentially, which is the usufruct. You get to use it, but you don't own it. It's not owned until it's paid for. But what happened is he exchanged labor for legal and equitable title in the vehicle. You see what I'm saying? So something real for something real, he took it out of the matrix. And now it's paid for. You see what I'm saying? It's not, there's no commercial paper involved. And that's why when I buy my land, and we'll talk about this, I pay for it with coin, with silver coin, and I put it on a deed. Okay? And so then what I do two things. I pay for it with coin, and I bring forward all the rights and privileges of the land patent. So that's what I do. We'll talk about land when the time comes. That's coming. Anyways, so and we'll talk about that too. Something to think about. So I make up my own picture ID. I record it. Are you a person? A person's a fictitious entity. A motor vehicle's commercial. Private vehicle. I tell them in there that I'm not a person, okay, and I tell them that my motor vehicle is a private vehicle, okay. If you look in there, you'll see that it says, as a matter of fact, my truck, if you go look at the truck out here, okay, it's got private vehicle. You want to go out there, we'll go out there at break and I'll show you. It's got private vehicle on the rear tailgate, okay, and the whole idea being is that it's not a motor vehicle, it's a private vehicle, and it's not involved in commerce. You see what I'm saying? And because I'm the king, okay, I don't care whose plate's on it, and I tell them that. I tell them I might have RT plates, and if you look in my document that I serve on them, and that's over here, the Notice and Demand to Corporate Commercial Agents, okay, I've got sample RT plates in there, and I tell them in there, I tell them I might have RT plates, I might have no plates, I may have state plates. It doesn't matter, because I am taking it back. I'm the king. I have that right. There's no valid contract. Remember, it's a nullity. See what I'm saying? And so I'm the king. I can do anything I want. And they don't have any authority. Everything they do is under color of law. So I tell them it's a private vehicle. I give them notice that I do not have a motor vehicle. I've seen vehicles in Arizona that have registration that's been expired for years. You know, it might be 5-10 years. And they got a private vehicle on them. They're still driving them around. And I'm guessing it's probably because the cops aren't bothering them. You see what I'm saying? Again, you got to notice them. A friend of mine told me that a cop came up to him. This was here in Texas, and I can't remember who that was. But somebody here in Texas told me that a cop came up to him and said, quote, "Why is my computer telling me to leave you alone?" I bet that's what they're saying about me now. Okay, I tell them, "You're not authorized to serve commercial process on me." This defeats them in another way. You think that's all commerce. And so they're giving you a ticket. That's commercial process. Okay? That's commercial. That's completely commercial. And so it defeats them in another way. It's until you tell them they cannot do that, they can presume they can. You see what I'm saying? You have to defeat their presumptions. I demand that they protect me. Again, this is for Canada, but United States is foreign to Texas. Okay? And the state of Texas is a municipal corporation. That's a subcorporation of the municipal corporation called United States. And all courts, police, law enforcement officer are in the United States. I mean, all you got to do is look at the flag that's in there. And all of their legislation is color of law. They have no authority. The United States is a municipal corporation. Canada is a municipal corporation domiciled in the District of Columbia. I didn't know if you know that. Canada is part of the United States. Matter of fact, Article 11 in the Articles of Confederation even says that Canada can join the Union anytime they want. That's the only foreign state that's allowed to do that. But it says, and Canada's, I got documents, it's digital, that shows that Canada is a municipal corporation domiciled in the District of Columbia. So it's already here. Canada's part of the United States. That's the reason the state of Texas says the provinces of Canada are a state. Okay, remember it says that? Well, Canada is more or less voluntary, you know. I mean, it's all martial law, but anyways, in Canada, the FBI has offices in Ottawa, Toronto, Vancouver. The FBI has offices in in Europe and Germany. They've got offices all over the world. You know, Philippines is part of the United States. I've seen court cases that talk about that. Okay, and
Guam.
yeah, Japan. Well, I know Guam is.
Puerto Rico foreclosures
I know Puerto Rico is. Okay, so one of the things I tell them is that the use of codes, rules, and regulations, if you read that document, this is something I just got from somebody, and it's really slick, and so, you know, a lot of this stuff is stuff that I got from someone else, and I've just been collecting it. But anyways, it says in there that the use of codes, rules, and regulations should not be construed to imply that I've agreed to any jurisdiction. You'd have to read it and see what it says. It's pretty good. Anyways, commercial paper, if they receive payment in commercial paper, they're a municipal corporation. And also, and this is one thing that I put in my court documents to get out of paying filing fees, is that there's 3 requirements for a nation, okay? People, money, and resources. And so I put on my document, I'm a holder of the office of the people, and then I also say that I have at least $21 in silver, okay, and that I have absolute title to the land, and that makes me a nation, and so again, that was actually what I put in my documents. That was all the other stuff was in those documents, and they would still not grant that the case proceed without the payment of fees. Well, when I started putting that in there, no problem ever since. The only legitimate power that's held by any government is power that is delegated by we the people, and if I delegate authority, I still retain that authority, and if I delegate authority, I can revoke it. And you saw that from some of the court cases we already talked about. I have, and this is another thing I tell them, is my rights are unalienable, not inalienable, and there's a difference. And I tell them also that any law merchant contract is a nullity, and any contract with any fictitious entity is a nullity. In other words, at common law, the only valid contract is between living souls, okay? If there's a contract between me and a fictitious entity, it's not a contract. It's a nullity. It doesn't exist. And so that's what I tell them. It tells them I have the right to resist unlawful arrest with lethal force if necessary. I think we already talked about that a little bit. Where the officer is killed in the course of the disorder, which naturally accompanies an attempted arrest that is resisted, the law looks with very different eyes upon the transaction when the officer had the right to make the arrest from what it does when the officer has no right. What may be murder in the first case may be nothing more than manslaughter in the other, or the facts might show that no offense has been committed. Any restraint upon my liberty is an arrest. And that's what the courts have said. Any restraint is an arrest. And I don't care what they want to call it, it's an arrest. And then I sign a seal of red ink on the land. Okay, I always use red ink, and it's signed on the land. And red ink is what sovereigns use. The sovereigns use the right-hand side of the page. That's another thing. Judges always sign on the right-hand side of the page. Okay, always, always, always sign on the right-hand side. Witnesses. I like to use 2 or 3 witnesses. Actually, I haven't even been using witnesses lately because I'm not sure that it's really necessary. Actually, getting that chief judge to effect service for me is absolutely perfect, and I don't need witnesses with that. And but if you could get 26 witnesses, you could essentially say that I can convene a grand jury, and so that's kind of intimidating. I always send my notice and demand by registered mail. Registered mail is kept under lock and key, and there's a chain of custody. A better way to effect service is personal service with 3 or 4 people to each make an affidavit of service, but that is a lot of hassle. And a lot of these judges don't make themselves easily accessible, and so that makes it even more difficult. And the object is to build a case against them, and they know that's what's going on. And hopefully you never have to proceed, but at least you've laid the foundation. If they do anything other than grovel, file a criminal complaint. I let them prove they're honoring their oath of office, and I attach my evidence, and I send the criminal complaint to the boss. If possible, record the criminal complaint into the public with the county recorder's office. After 30 days, add their boss And I already talked about this. Keep going up to the chain of command, up to the Queen or the President. Add the Queen or the President, record the document into the public, and send them a copy. And I always use registered mail or personal service with witnesses. This is an interesting thing in Canada. The Queen has decided recently not just to rubber stamp whoever the Prime Minister recommends for Governor General. In the past, in Canada, the Prime Minister would make a recommendation and the Queen would just go ahead and do it. And now she's hand-picking the Governor Generals. And I think it's because of stuff that I've been sending her and some other friends of mine. There's a friend of mine actually that's been sending her lots of interesting stuff, eh? And he just accuses her of treason and perjury and all that stuff, eh? So anyway, so I think, matter of fact, this last Governor General took office here like last September, and I'll bet you, matter of fact, he even said that he went over there and visited with the Queen for about a week, and I'll bet you she had a pile of paperwork there, some of it from me, and she said, you know, I really wish I didn't get any of this stuff. Well, again, it comes down to the, you know, and that's one thing that Canada's lucky in a way, because there's only so much. She's there, and that the buck stops there. You know what I mean? And so in a way, you know, they're limited as to what. That's why in Alberta, the worst thing they can do is you can't register your vehicle to get a driver's license. Well, whoop-de-doo. Here I was driving around in Alberta with Texas plates for like 6 months. And after a while, I mean, they didn't. Of course, you know, I usually watch for the cops anyways, you know, but sometimes I miss it. At any rate, when you use this procedure in an ensuing action, it essentially becomes a counterclaim. Always take the initiative. Go on the attack. You got to be, what do they call it in engineering? Proactive. You got to be proactive. Okay? This in engineering, that's what they tell us they want us to do, is they want us to be proactive. Okay? You got to be proactive. You got to be on the attack. You show up at the judge's office. Now, you can do this here. You can't do this in Canada. Show up at the judge's office a few days before the hearing with witnesses and demand, you know. You let them know who's boss. When in court, they always ask you, do you understand? Now, this is something. According to Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1856 edition, under the definition of parties, it says, those persons who want understanding are idiots, lunatics, drunkards, and infants. So, Judge, I can see you're not an infant. Have you been drinking, or no, it says, let's see. Are you drunk or just an idiot? That's what I'd say, something like that. I guess it depends on how belligerent you want to be, in other words, you know. But you're, in essence, stating that you made a mistake of law and fact due to the fraud, coercion, and intimidation on the part of government officials, and this process is simply correcting the public record. You're telling them to correct their records. Christ said, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. You've been empowered with knowledge. Never take anyone's word for this. Study it out for yourself. Knowledge is power. What's the alternative?